number 55, and the title is Debt and Taxes. Taxing the rich will hurt America and destroy the leisure class, and this will destroy civilization, said J.P. Morgan, Jr. Today in America, we have a two-tiered tax system. We have one for the rich and one for the rest of us. When the federal income tax was enacted by constitutional amendment in 1913, the guiding principle was to tax those who had the money. The rates at that time were 73% on incomes over $1 million, 7% on incomes over $500,000, and 1% on taxable income up to $20,000. The first $3,000 was exempt, and only 2% of the population paid the tax. The income tax came about as the result of a third-party movement against the power of the business trusts. Before the income tax, government received its revenue from Republican-sponsored tariffs and excise taxes. These were regressive and unfair taxes. The income tax seemed to be the fairest way to tax. During the 1920s, Andrew Mellon sought to have the top income tax rate reduced to 10%. Mellon mouthed the doctrine that lower tax rates produced more revenue. In 1921, the Republicans lowered the top rate to 56%, and in 1926 it was lowered to 25%. These tax cuts produced a crop of millionaires and a dangerous concentration of wealth in the hands of the few. These actions were instrumental in causing the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, there was an oversupply of goods, but no money to purchase them. To increase federal revenues in 1932 and again in 1936, the top rate was raised to 63% and 79%, respectively. This was sound fiscal policy. To increase revenues, prices or taxes must be raised. Spending cuts and downsizing are inadequate measures that lead to wrong results. Our modern tax system grew out of World War II. The bottom rate fell from $4,000 to $2,000, and percentages went from 4% to 19%. The top rate was 88%. And in 1943, we got withholding taxes. In 1939, only 4 million tax returns were filed. But by 1943, as the base was broadened, 40 million returns were filed. During some of our best growth years, through the 1950s and the early 1960s, the top rate on income over $400,000 was 91%. This kind of taxing ignited the growth of the middle class and its growing demand for jobs. Through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, our tax system rightfully distributed income downward. This is what fuels growth. If tax data for the last 50 years is analyzed, we find it contradicts those who claim that higher taxes discourage the creation of jobs. As we have reduced corporate taxes, jobs have been eliminated, disappeared, and wages have sunk. Since small business in America employs 80% of our workforce, why do we continue giving big business all the tax breaks? Why does our tax code favor foreign investors? Why do American companies prefer to pay high rate taxes in foreign countries rather than in the good old USA? Our tax code subsidizes citizens of other countries. Foreign tax credits rob our treasury. In 1989, 71% of foreign-owned businesses paid no United States taxes. Our Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, has stacked the deck, the tax system, against those who earn a weekly paycheck. In 1991, the top 1% of taxpayers paid 22% of the collected taxes. There's a lot of money at the top. In his time, Thomas Jefferson didn't mind paying for new public works if it could be done at the expense of the rich. Since 1973, the United States economy has been sluggish. It has experienced a silent depression. But during this time, the top 20% of taxpayers have experienced unchallenged prosperity and affluence, while the other 80% of us have struggled to stay afloat. From 1948 to 1973, the United States economy grew at an average yearly rate of 3.7%. But since 1973, 80% of Americans have experienced stagnant real incomes. Even during the Reagan boom years, wages went down and leveled off again. Since 1973, the constant dollar value of the average worker's weekly earnings fell at a yearly rate of 0.9%. During the greedy 1980s, income for the top 10% of families grew faster than incomes for all other families. Family income for the rest of us grew very little. In 1990, the top 20% of taxpayers had 44.3% of this nation's wealth. In 1973, middle-class families had 57.7% of total income. But by 1990, this figure had dropped to 49.7%, and at the same time, upper-class income rose from 21.4% to 29.8%. Between 1979 and 1989, the standard of living of the bottom 80% of married couple families did not improve. Due to our overly generous and misguided tax policies, the rich have gotten richer. The top 1% now own 37% of the nation's financial wealth. Well, wait a minute. Doesn't this prove As many congressmen glibly point out, that we are an economically upwardly mobile society? Don't we easily move through the classes in our journey to the top? Can't we all live the American dream? No. Before 1980, 35.5% of low-income people moved into middle-income groups. But after 1980, this percentage dropped to 30.4%. We are a downwardly economically mobile society. Even when times were good, only a tiny percentage ever made it from the middle class to the upper class. We've never been a truly upwardly economically mobile society in relation to the upper classes. Through anti-tax and anti-government rhetoric, those at the top have dominated the political process in the last 30-some years. They have us arguing over flat taxes, consumption taxes, value-added taxes, sales taxes, and tariffs. We've lost sight of the fact that when administered properly, the income tax is the fairest of the taxes. Its fairness increases when it becomes more steeply progressive on the top 20% of taxpayers. Every tax reform measure undertaken in the last 30 years has hurt the middle class while benefiting the rich. The proportion of taxes paid by the top 1% has fallen by 21.1%. In 1947, corporate taxes supplied 24.9% of federal tax revenues. But in 1991, corporations paid only 7.1%, one-third. Now, a person using his full brain must ask, why, with the rich and corporations paying so little taxes, is our economy so sluggish? Maybe if the rich and corporations pay zero taxes, then our economy will take off. Hardly. We've been snookered. In 1891, Andrew Carnegie said that enormous wealth generally deadens the talents and energies of the son and tempts him to lead a less useful life. Oh my, I think he was describing George W. Bush. Those with lots of money work less. They are less productive, and they are lazy. They go to great lengths, though, to prove otherwise. It's not welfare money that destroys incentive. It's great wealth. When we concentrate wealth in the hands of the few, we create a constricted economy. Money has been drained out of the economy. This, obviously, creates less consumption and less production, which equals a sluggish economy. Money in the stock market benefits no one but the players. Buying on margin puts no money into the coffers of the companies who issued the stock. The rich use money differently than we do. In their call for fairness in the tax system, the rich conveniently leave out the matter of relativity. We must keep in mind that the purchasing power of our real income determines our true standard of living. If we have a 20% flat tax, and we apply this to an income of $20,000 and one of $200 million, one can do a lot of living on the $160 million left on the $200 million income, but not too much living on the $16,000 that's left from the $20,000 income. The solution to income inequality in America is the progressive income tax. The rates on the rich must be raised and made steeply progressive on the top 10% of taxpayers. We should all be ashamed that those who receive unemployment and disability insurance must pay taxes on them. This is obscene. Taxes must be paid by those who can afford to pay them. Otherwise, we're no better than Kings Herod and Solomon, who taxed their people obscenely. Lower taxes do not necessarily lead to increased production and investment. Supply-side rhetoric is a pipe dream. The economic expansion of the 1980s was driven by classical Keynesian deficit spending. Rush Limbaugh says he earned all his money. It's his, and he wants to keep it. Limbaugh forgets that taxes are the price we pay for a civilization that allows him to safely make his money. But do any of us really earn our money? Money belongs to the government. Paper money only has value according to the strength of and the faith we have in the government that issued the money. Money doesn't define our worth or our earning power. If this is true, aren't conservatives hurting our economy with their brutal anti-government rhetoric? Yet these misguided people call themselves patriots. Reform is one thing, but today's revolutionary, extreme conservative wants to destroy the whole of government and start all over again. But when all is said and done, aren't we overtaxed? Certain segments of our population are overtaxed. We earn low wages and pay high taxes. This is because those with the money have been given tax break after tax break. Americans used to resent the wealthy, but today we are insipid and overly deferential to their wants and needs. Our greedy tongues hang out when the rich promise us trickle-down benefits. Justice Louis Brandeis thought of the rich and bankers as the enemy, and that they should be taxed to disarm them. He also felt that laissez-faire was a license for monopoly. Where does our budget deficit figure in all this? Keep in mind that before Ronald Reagan, deficits were manageable and actually trivial. Under Ronald Reagan, our national debt tripled, and this wasn't because Congress went wild for 8 years out of 200. Reagan's tax cuts and massive defense buildup were responsible for our huge deficits, as they are today under George W. Bush. Reagan's policies caused exploding interest payments, which now funnel gobs of money to the favored few on the top rungs of the economic ladder. There are only two workable ways of paying off debt. One, increased income, and two, paying over time. Spending cuts don't work for families, or, for that matter, for government. What could a family cut? Could they cut food, housing, clothing, or transportation to and from work? The only way to pay down our deficit is to raise taxes. No one likes to pay taxes, but since we all don't own our own plot of land anymore, we need government to help us out. Because of government income redistribution efforts, we have what we had at that time, a $4.5 trillion economy. It is much more than that today. Some producers are so stupid and greedy that they overlook how income redistribution helps them. More money circulating in the economy means more consumers can buy more products. Debt and taxes shouldn't be used as sacred objects in a religio-economic war to try and change America into a capitalistic free trade theocracy. An economy where the 80% at the middle and bottom rungs of the economic ladder can't fully participate isn't an economy that can create jobs or increase tax revenues. Do we have the courage to change things? Or will we keep buying the same old lines and keep giving more money to the rich and powerful? The end.
Hi, this is William Morrow. Are you one of those people who join a health club, and after they have your big, overpriced annual membership, you notice that you're on your own with little or no results even after all the promises? Then the website Personal Trainer is for you.
Thank you very much, William H. Morrow III.
So you lost another argument with a conservative, right-wing Republican. He talked over you. He screamed and yelled. He brought out the Bible. He thumped it. He quoted scripture to you. You were lost because you came at him with facts. Nothing but facts. And you expected that would make you look good. That would make you win the argument, but it didn't. You know why you lost the argument? You know why you're going to lose your next argument? Because you don't read Censored. Censored, the 30-year-old newsletter that shows you how to defeat a conservative. Read Censored, and you'll have all the ammunition you need. Every time you get into an argument with a right-wing conservative, so-called Christian. Censored, that's all you need. Read it, and defeat a conservative.
Greetings, listeners. Let me speak to you for a moment about the foundation of our entire organization, Newsletters Censored. It was founded by our mentor, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman, in 1977. It discusses the 5 taboos of American life: politics, religion, health, human sexuality, and child rearing. You won't find anything like this in the mainstream media and the press. It reveals the kind of truth that most people are afraid to hear. Can you handle it? We are living in the end times, so in order to defeat a conservative and save America, you need Newsletters Censored. Go to www.newslettercensored.com, click on the printable order form page, and with your gift to support this work, get your free annual subscription. This is James P. Madonna of Megalife 21, the hardest hitting internet talk radio station on the planet.